In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. You may be seated. So contrary to what's printed in your bulletin, I will be your preacher this night. If you feel like that's kind of a ripoff, what I had promised was that my colleague visiting from Cuba, Father Andres, would be presiding tonight, not preaching tonight. And so he will be presiding at the Eucharist when the time comes. I love to preach too much to give up the pulpit too often, so you're stuck with me. Today is the day in the life of the church when we remember and give thanks to God for the life and witness of Saint Hilary. My wife was asking me last night, who's your saint for tomorrow? I said, Saint Hilary. She said, who? Right? I can tell by the looks on some of your faces you were having the same question. Saint Hilary is our saint for the day. Our Saint Hilary comes from a time in church history when Hilary was a boy's name. So Saint Hilary is from a French town. My French is not very good. There, thank you. I knew there would be a French scholar. Saint Hilary was the Bishop of Poitiers in France. Well, actually, at the time, it was called Gaul. That's how far back we go in the history of the church for our saint of the day. He was born at the turn of the 4th century, so the early 300s. So we're going pretty far back in the history of the church. I made a note from his biography that I read a little bit of, and I liked some of the opening lines. You just don't hear this sentence very often. Hilary was born in Gaul, and his parents were pagans of distinction. That's the phrase that I liked that you don't hear very often. His parents were pagans of distinction, and it goes on further to say he received a good pagan education. Another phrase we don't hear very often. Evidently, though, as a part of that good pagan education, he also studied the Old and New Testaments, which led to his eventual conversion to faith in Jesus Christ. And he grew up then and became a leader of the church in Poitiers, and eventually was selected to be their bishop. And he is remembered by the church, not for any of that, but because he was active in a time of the church when the leaders, the bishops, the theologians, the other leaders in the church, even the political powers of the day, hadn't yet come to a definite conclusion on what it meant to say that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, right? And our saint for today, Hilary, was a champion for what we now call Orthodox Catholic or Nicene Christianity, which is to say that God the Son is co-equal to and made of the same substance of God the Father, right? It seems almost passé for us because that's the only kind of Christianity we've ever known. And we affirm these things about Jesus every Sunday when we say the Nicene Creed, right? It's hard for us to imagine a time in the history of the church when that particular question, which is so important, was not yet settled. But that's the time when Hilary was the bishop. And he was a very articulate and outspoken and courageous defender of the Nicene faith, of the Trinitarian Orthodox Catholic Christianity. And he lived in a time when there was another alternative. There was a early church leader called Arius, who was active in Alexandria, northern Egypt, and he had a very different understanding of what it meant to say that Jesus was the Son of God. He felt and taught, and many, many people believed that Jesus, as the Son of God, was not of the same substance of God, and not co-equal with God, and not co-eternal with God. That there was a time when the Son was not, and that God created the Son, and therefore the Son, instead of having a trinity a God who is a trinity of three co-equal persons of the same substance, co-equal and co-eternal, the Arius and his followers, who were called Arians, taught that there was a sort of subordinate structure when it came to God, that God the Father was up here and he was the highest and the only one that was eternal and the only one that was uncreated, and that God the Father created the Son and the Spirit. You see, and the result is a very different Christianity, a very different understanding of God, and a very different what we call Christology, a different understanding of Jesus. So we have this tug back and forth for a few centuries in the early church. What's going to be the way that the church is going to move forward with this understanding of who Jesus was as Son of God? And so you had the Arians versus the Orthodox or Nicene Christians. And Hilary, our saint for today, was one of the most outspoken, courageous, speaking up on behalf of Orthodox Christianity, what we now call Orthodox Christianity. It was not easy to do because at that time the emperor of the western part of the Roman Empire, Constantius II, was an Arian, right? And he had all of the political and military power, and he was trying to force many people in the west part of the church, the western part of the church, to become Arians. And Hilary, our hero, was standing up in the face of persecution of the emperor and saying, no, he called the emperor the Antichrist. And as you might imagine, that didn't go over well with the emperor. And Hilary was exiled to Phrygia. And I can tell by the looks on your faces, you're all thinking, yes, Phrygia, of course. It's in what we call Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey. They sent him away out of Gaul so he could stop trying to convert these Arians back to Orthodox Christianity. So he was in exile for a period of time, somewhere between 5 and 10 years, we think. He used that time. He didn't give up governing his diocese. He governed it by correspondence. And it gave him a little bit of extra time to write down his arguments for Orthodox Christianity. And the reason why his exile ended and he went back to Gaul was because the bishops, the Arian bishops in Asia Minor, said, listen, he's too good. He's converting all the Arians over here. Get him out of here. We don't want him over here. So they sent him back to Gaul, where he finished his life and his defense of Nicene Trinitarian Christianity. And we know, of course, because we say the Nicene Creed on Sunday, we know that Hilary and the others who were the champions of Nicene Trinitarian Christianity won the day. And it took courage, though, and it took persistence, it took intelligence, it took the ability to speak clearly and plainly in ways that people would understand. And in the face of sometimes great persecution, these heroes of the early church are the reason why we have the faith that we have today. And so it's for them, and especially today, for St. Hilary, the Bishop of Poitiers, that we give thanks to God for his life and his witness. Amen.